Hey, everybody. Really exciting discussion today as we dive into the future of road safety and AI innovation with Netrodyn. We're using cutting edge tech to make driving safer and smarter. Adam, how are you?
Man, I tell you what, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the event here.
Well, thanks for being here. Really intrigued by the mission and the big idea you're moving forward for listeners and viewers who may not be familiar. How do you describe Netrodyn in a nutshell?
Well, I tell you what, one of the things that I always start with is I tell people, like, watch when you're driving, just look around. Does it feel like it's getting calmer or more congested? And overall, like, I was driving home the other day and I was watching this person in the car next to me, and I think they were watching a movie the whole way home. So it's certainly getting more congested. And one of the things that Netrodyn really wanted to do was get to the root cause of how do we make roads safer. And that's a very novel idea. But I think one of the things that we really focused on was, can we have a relationship with the driver where they want to improve? Can we motivate them? Can we engage them in a very transparent way that naturally they without even knowing it, they become better drivers? And I think that approach is really one of the foundations of Netrodyn. Netrodyn, in its word origins, is the power of vision. And so the ability for us to use AI learning models to really assess what's happening on the road and then coach the driver. And when I say coach, Evan, historically you think about safety on the road of, let me tell you the 10 things you did wrong today. I might suggest that there's probably 950 things you did right. And I think that, with any human, that's always a much more engaging conversation to, have a complete picture of what you did versus, the 2 or 3 things that maybe you missed. And so we certainly used technology with the focus of, interacting with drivers in a very positive way.
I love that. Well, let's take a look at your website and a video that you guys have to see Netrodyn in action.
Drive better. They speed less. They aren't distracted by their phone. They're happier because they get rewarded for good driving. And they can manage their own success by coaching themselves. Fleets see reduced accidents, lowered insurance costs, improved driver retention, and ROI that results in increased profits. And our system is an all-in-one solution that can help you with fleet management and compliance, just in case you need that too.
Wow, that looks really powerful, to say the least.
Yeah, it was snappy.
Pretty good. So who are your customers and how are they putting your technology to work?
Yeah, so if you think about the people that we really start to care about, well, I'm going to back up for a second. We care about everyone driving on the road, but the vehicles that are probably have the more focus, or something that has a brand on the side of the vehicle, or they're moving people, or they're moving cargo, right? So, those are all very critical transportation modes that we service. But some of our customers are the largest cash transport carriers. Armored car. The largest retailers in the United States. You probably see the vehicle pull up to your house a couple times a day with deliveries. We have some of the largest private fleets. One of the fleets is one of my favorites. Growing up in middle school was, the snacks that you got in the cafeteria. They're a main supplier for that. And then we have some of the very largest, I call it commercial trucking fleets that certainly carry a lot of cargo and are, really supply us with all the goods that we need every day. And the other end of the spectrum, some of our great, biggest customers are moving students. Or having rideshare type activity. So, I think when we look at our typical customer, it's somebody who's moving people, which are very valuable, or moving freight, which is very valuable, and has those both have commercial applications to to their businesses.
Amazing. And has your technology and AI in general required us to change the way we think about road safety?
You know what? In this case, I was thinking about how that really worked, and we really thought about what causes an accident, right? So there's 4 or 5 things that represent almost a large majority of the source of an accident. Maybe you're too close to the car in front of you, reducing your response time. You're driving too fast. Again, your response time is jeopardized. You're distracted, or you're not thinking about, your action in the intersections is a little risky. So all of those have a large footprint on sources of accident. The way that our system's architected is that we have an immediate identification when those events happen. The traditional model is I might sit down with you a week later and talk about the 3 intersections that you ran through last Sunday. Well, a lot of people, they're so focused on their jobs, they really don't recall at 1:04 on Sunday afternoon, did I or didn't I? Right. So the trick is, can you act now, talk later? Right. Can I use the information that we've gathered, which is, through AI modeling? I know it's a stop sign. I know it's a red light. I know I know what the posted speed sign is. I know what kind of objects in front of me, car, bus, motorcycle, and I can direct action to the driver immediately. Please slow down, put down your phone, create some space, remember to stop. But the cognitive improvement that people don't recognize is that if you remove, I'll call it negative energy, if you don't fill that back up, it comes back. Think about, we've all been in diets together, right? And we're super focused and we lost 20 pounds and we feel really good about it. And about 2 months later, we found 10 pounds back, right? Because we didn't fill that bucket with something positive. And in this case, we have a set of recognition elements that follow up to say, please remember to stop. And if you stopped at that stop sign for the next 75 stop signs in a row, there's added recognition that I'm going to reinforce, the already acknowledgement of good driving. So I think that formula has really our attach rate with drivers is very high because it's frictionless. There's not a lot of shame. There's not a lot of, oh boy, boss wants to talk to me. What I do now. And it has that soft cognitive approach. Someone might ask you to take out the trash. You might do it in the very first ask. I'm a little slower. It usually takes me about 2 or 3 times to remind me to take out the trash. But it's all about when our brains are ready to repair and sort of remove that distraction. In this case, it's, hey, you're going too fast. Okay, I got it. I'm going to now slow down because I don't want to hear that, thing talk to me anymore. And the backside of that is if you actually slow down and change your habit, then there's, a trophy at the end of that action. So it's worked really well. Drivers are very responsive. Everyone's very conscious of being watched and judged. But I think if I added a third peg to that stool of watched and judged and recognized for, and rewarded, I think it becomes a much more solid, engagement.
Brilliant. Love the positive reinforcement approach to safer driving. You must have so many stories and anecdotes about the impact you're making. Any that you can share? What have you seen so far?
Yeah, it was interesting. I ran a pilot with one of our larger customers, and it's a delivery network. And after a couple of weeks, we were working with this particular customer, and I said to them, you have a stop sign problem. I go, you do and you don't. I go, as an example, I can tell you how many stop signs you actually fully stopped at. So I know how many times you rolled through a stop sign, and I know how many times you didn't stop. I go, the good news is that you're in the high 80s, low 90s for compliance. However, that 9% that, call it 12%, 9 out of the 12% that's remaining is no stops, which is, that's you have a brand and you want to protect that brand. And also you don't want to delay any kind of deliveries because of accidents. Well, they came back and said, no, Adam, it's just around our DCs. We understand all the vehicles get dispatched in the morning. It's like a caravan out of the parking lot, and nobody recognizes that one stop sign at the end of the parking lot. So we went back and looked, and the problem, there was a small sliver of that happening. But what we did is we essentially activated the in-cab notification to the driver, and it was the perfect A/B example of We knew what the action was before. We turned on this notification. It was a soft reminder. Please remember to stop. Right. So after I went to a stop sign, it didn't distract you, but it planted the seed. Right. So now the seed is planted. Now it's growing. And what we saw was the very next week, we had a 35% reduction in no stops. Wow. After 4 weeks, we had a 75% reduction. So that number that was in that high 80s, 90s was now in the high 90s.
Wow.
Right. And so just that ability, that single case study of, the light touch of sharing information in the right way certainly allows you to walk through a doorway together versus pulling someone through, the doorway and forcing them to do something. So, I've seen great results, and all those actions matter, right? Because if you change your driving habit, then the likelihood of an accident reduces, and the likelihood of that driver not getting home to their family is reduced. And the company who, delivers to us, they're not jacking up their delivery charges to us. So there's so many great benefits of not having a crash. Mostly, I sort of attach it to like getting people home with their families is super important.
Wow, what a wonderful story. So looking ahead, I mean, AI and machine learning, machine vision is just, speeding at a, day to day, week to week, incredible pace. How do you see Netrodyn leveraging all those advancements, and how is your own AI evolving over time?
Yeah, so I would say, the scenarios I just talked to were more reactionary, right? There was an action I had, and I've sped up the response to the change or to the workflow, right? So, you see that now, like if you're writing an introductory paragraph for an email, and you kind of want the right wording, and you might use an AI tool to, kind of speed up your process. I know that the next step in AI, when you start building out these large models, there's a massive ability to start producing predictive results. So, hey, you're driving through Pittsburgh. It's the middle of December. The last 8 years, in this middle of December, the snowfall has been 5 inches, expect snow, right? So you can start mine historical data, either geographic or driving data, and, where you can really recognize those patterns. And once I can recognize those patterns, I can start to be proactive. The other things you can start seeing is where, that's a huge advance, so I call it, instead of reactive, it'd be proactive AI. The other piece that I think is really interesting is the compute power of where different systems can start sharing information. So I might be able to look at a large set of video and say, customers can do this today. I might upload 30 minutes of video because my driver said somebody threw a rock at my car, but I don't know exactly when. Okay, now I got 20 minutes of video. I can either sit there for 20 minutes, Evan, looking for the one guy who threw the rock. There's certain AI tools that are really interesting that I can take large chunks of data and say, in these 25 minutes of video, find me anyone with a throwing motion with a rock, and it will like filter down to those 2 minutes of video. Again, one of the big benefits of AI is to take a lot of information and distill it into streamlined action. And that's exactly what the Driver Eye product does. We mirror that AI model of massive amounts of information and distill it down to please slow down, right? Right. Or put down your phone, right? Or good job on creating space. Though, they seem so simple, but the ability to harvest all that is pretty complex, and it's very cool.
I bet we may need a couple hours just to dive into all of that. So beyond the huge opportunity you have ahead of you in trucking, what other industries or use cases do you think can benefit from your technology?
Well, there's a lot of activity. So if I start in the driver's seat and I start working my way out, right? So the driver on a moving vehicle, 80% of those activities are almost the same in any industry. Now, a school bus versus an oil and gas company, you can imagine there's a different driving style and a different, care. But in all those activities, like taking school bus and oil and gas, it might be very interesting to start to develop analytics around the non-driving environment, right? So where are the students crossing, the stop sign on the school bus, or as they move out in front of the hood of the vehicle, or an oil and gas, and what is the action when I'm hooking up pumps and hoses, or if I'm making a delivery when I go into the store and I have a dolly full of totes, and I left my back door open. How do I, monitor, shrinkage and inventory, things like that. So I think that's a natural step. And then on top of that, I had made mention of things like micro weather, or, I call it flash traffic, or, things like that I think are very impactful, where I might be able to tell a driver you're about to pull into Denver, and they just got hit by a snowstorm, a flash snowstorm, do not go over that pass, near the mountains, because I think it's I-70, but do not go on I-70 because, nothing's moving. So I might as well park you in Denver versus having you stuck on the highway, with spoilage, on your load, or your driver's not getting home, when they're supposed to. So I do think, as we extend outside the cab, there's just so many workspaces. And the good news is, Evan, that so I'll give you a magnitude of power. Your laptop has a gigaflop processor in it. And I don't know why I know all this information, but I just committed to, I'm not an engineer. So I just know these numbers. But it allows your laptop to do about 1 billion transactions per second. The first version of Driver Eye, we're talking about a teraflop, which is 1 trillion calculations in second. So that means the Driver Eye device has compute power about 1,000 times more than a laptop. The platforms that we're talking about now have a 10 to 15x of that number. So, if you think about the magnitude of the power of that data consumption, you could be 10 to 15,000 times faster than your computer. And your computer is probably really fast, right? So when you can start to analyze massive amount of data and and apply tremendous compute against it, the opportunities are really, really solid.
Amazing. And then you add the power of 5G or Starlink or other technologies for the cloud.
Yeah, 4K, 5G, all these things that just make things faster and clearer. And, again, that act now, talk later model just gets better, because now I'm looking at every one of your actions. And the sprinkle on it is that I can also confirm that you're doing exactly what I asked you to do, or you're doing above and beyond, right? So that discretionary effort is a huge thing to, you got some drivers who just do the bare minimums, and, that's great. But then you really want to capture the moments of excellence and put a shine on those drivers, because that feeling is contagious. If you got drivers that are locked into that, new drivers will gravitate towards that. Right, you gravitate towards the energy that's in the room, right? If you got people complaining, everyone complains. If you got people who are happy, everyone becomes happy, right? So, that's really the influence, or the support that we give to some of these companies to change the attitude in the room, and then others will follow.
Wonderful vision. So you're already leaning into the future, but if you were to fast forward 3, 4, 5 years, what impact do you see yourself making on driver safety potentially, and even just the broader transportation environment?
Yeah, I think everything that moves will get smarter. The big question is always, when do you think autonomous vehicles are coming? And I put a pin in that one, and I'm like, well, I know how old I am, and I know the timelines they're talking about. I might not see it. My kids might see it. But I do know for certain that everything that moves will get smarter. Right, the vehicles will have a much better aptitude for their position around other objects. The drivers will have more visibility in a receivable way, and so I just think everything was going to get a lot smarter, and you'll have just a natural elimination of I'll call it the statistical crash. Right, just eventually, if you back up your vehicle 1,000 times, there will be one moment that you hit something. Right, it's just statistics. Against a large set. But I think that number will inherently shrink, because, again, the vehicles, you're seeing it now in your passenger car, you're seeing it in commercial vehicles. So you'll just have these large data sets that just help, remove those, remove the fringe cases and I call it push out the likelihood of an accident even further than reducing an accident.
Wow, what a wonderful goal. So you guys are in hyper growth mode at Netrodyn. What are you up to the rest of this year? You must have a busy schedule ahead of news, announcements, customer meetings, and beyond.
Yeah. So the fall, everyone gets back to work after, we spend summer vacation off or, traveling. So typically September, October, November, there's always a lot of meetings where, the different segments that we support, get together and talk about best practices. We are actually kicking off a customer tour. So a little sneak peek is we have a Madden-esque sort of experience that's going to be traveling the country and visiting some of our customer locations. And then I just think that later in the year, that enablement of platform that I talked about, that explosion of power, that's in the near term where, we'll start to explore what does it mean when I get that, tens of thousands of X power improvement over, what happens today. So I think all those are very exciting. Netrodyn, we continue to grow. We have customers that, are very gracious with their time and they tell prospects their experience. We have offices in San Diego, San Francisco. We have a really, really large office in Bangalore where a lot of our engineering team is. And I believe we just expanded to an office in the Midwest. So, we're just, we're a global company and we continue to sort of serve really, really important companies, big brands that, also serve the globe, they're international. And so, how you might operate in Japan or how you might operate in Spain or Germany or the UK or the US should have very similar properties of trying to, get drivers home, safe. I feel like it's a little bit of like a canned political statement, but in my heart, I do believe that, that is the goal of that. If I meet someone who drives, I don't want any bad to happen to them.
Well, it's an important mission, and all of us on the road are rooting for you and the team. So congratulations, onwards and upwards.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we'll take all that energy and, turn it into good.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining and sharing the big idea. Thanks everyone for listening, watching, sharing this episode, and be sure to check out our new TV show, Tech Impact TV, now on Bloomberg and Fox Business. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone.